Hi class, this video is on child labour and we've been exploring the idea of the impact of the Industrial Revolution on people. Here we have an image of some children labourers. So one of the worst problems in the new factories was the use of child labour. Families were often so desperate for money that children were required to work for them to even survive. Children could also be born into forced labour when, for example, they were born in a workhouse to parents who were bankrupt or destitute. By law, a child wasn't allowed to work until the age of 6, but few factory owners obeyed this rule. Some were starting as young as 5 years old, although the average was about 10 years old. Children would work alongside their mothers in coal, lead and tin mines, and we can see an image here of some children who had been working in a mine. And oftentimes what they were doing were breaking, sorting and washing ore and transporting it to the surface. But they also worked independently in a range of other industries where required. Children worked 12 to 16 hours a day and under conditions that were extremely difficult. So I've got an image for you here of some child workers known as breaker boys. Now sometimes old or injured men also worked in this role, but what they're doing here is they are breaking up coal into pieces, they're removing any impurities such as clay or sulphur, and then they're sorting it into categories of quality and size. It was reported that some 5-year-olds were taken away from homes by mill owners who lodged them in crowded sheds near factory gates and kept them at work for as long as they could stay awake. The children were valuable for factory owners or people who were producing goods because of their small fingers, and they could often carry out tasks that adults couldn't do. Due to their long hours and the repetitive nature of their work, children would often tire and they would fall asleep. Those who did were often whipped by their employers to stay awake, but some were so exhausted that they would fall forward into the working machinery and were killed. In some factories, children were employed to use their small hands to clean out the machines while they were operating, and many got injured when their hands got caught in the moving parts. And what you can see here is an image of children who had been injured in workplace accidents, and you can see many of them are on crutches. Now in Australia and elsewhere around the world, it was common to see poor families sign their children up to a factory or a business for life, and this was to ensure that they had a steady income. An example of this is in the Victorian woolen and cloth manufactory in Geelong, where children received no education and were committed to factory work forever. And obviously in these conditions, the workers' health was seriously affected over time. Numerous reports of children who had deformities, who suffered ill health, who had vision and other health conditions such as respiratory conditions. So work in this period is obviously very dangerous, and one that was quite dangerous was being a chimney sweep. And here I've got an image for you of a chimney sweep with his 2 apprentices, and this was taken in Germany about 1915. So parents of boys had to pay the employer to take them on as apprentices, but so many of the boys died that laws were passed to ensure that employers did not receive their final payments until after the boys had finished their apprenticeships. The final payment was considered an incentive to keep sweeps alive, or the apprenticed chimney sweeps alive. But even so, many died, and most commonly they're actually dying from cancer. And this is because coal dust, which is what they're cleaning out from the chimneys, gets collected and caught on their skin, and eventually it leads to cancer. Some chimney sweeps die as a result of accidents from being burnt, and others die as a result of suffocation. It was also fairly common for boys to get stuck in chimneys. So they're crawling into the chimneys themselves to clean them out, even though it was said to be common knowledge that employers fed their apprentice chimney sweeps not enough food in order to keep them thin and therefore able to climb up and down chimneys. And here's a little boy dressed up to celebrate the 100 years anniversary of a particular marketplace in England.